Can you hear us? My name is are we live? Okay, thank you. Good morning. My name is Chris Moyes, and I am the chair of the Board of Health. The clerk has confirmed that we have quorum, so I'll call meeting 32 of the Board of Health to order. Today's meeting is being held by video conference and in person at City Hall in Committee Room 1. Because we are meeting in person and remotely, we ask everyone for their patience with any delays and technical issues. If you are registered to speak at today's meeting, please listen for me to call your name. I will call speakers in the order they appear on the list. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the Board of Health page at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. The clerk has provided all agenda materials on toronto.ca/council and via CMP, the clerk's meeting portal. Directors, please ensure that your video is turned on. Please keep your mic muted unless you wish to question staff or to speak. As part of each agenda item, I will ask directors to raise their hand or unmute their mic if they wish to question staff or speak. I will then create a speakers list and will call on directors when it is their turn to speak. When voting on an item or motion, I ask the directors raise their hand to indicate their vote. Directors, I want to remind you that you must submit and approve your motions by email. Staff available at boh@toronto.ca to help with motions. The Board of Health acknowledges that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. The City of Toronto acknowledges all treaty peoples, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants, either in this generation or in generations past, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those who were brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. We pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you have an interest, please raise your hand or unmute your mic and indicate the item number and the nature of the interest. Seeing none. Next, we need a motion to confirm the minutes from our last Board of Health meeting on March 30th, 2026. Director Gord. I spelled it right? Gord. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay. That is the formalities of the meeting so far. So again, good morning to everybody. I see Councillor Thompson's online. Welcome, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had some challenges signing in this morning, but good morning, everyone.
So happy you're here now. So welcome to our May 4th meeting, and may the 4th be with you. I've always wanted to say that. We have a lighter agenda today, but we'll be addressing some very pertinent public health topics. First, I want to acknowledge that Toronto, May 5th, is the National Day of Awareness and Remembrance for the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls and the 2S LGBTI+ people, also known as Red Dress Day. As we take the day to honor the lives and legacies of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQI+ people, we must acknowledge that the way ongoing colonial violence touches all areas of our life and the impacts it can have on health outcomes, both at individual and community levels. We stand in solidarity with the families and communities who continue to pursue of justice, healing, and change, and remain committed to our ongoing work, co-led with Indigenous communities, to address the persisting health inequities that result from the legacy of colonialism. Today we'll discuss adverse childhood experience, ACEs. In Toronto, over 30% of adults in Toronto have reported at least one ACE. with Indigenous, Black, low-income immigrants, and 2 LGBTQ+ communities being disproportionately affected. It is a very heavy topic. It's important to talk about ACEs because they are associated with negative outcomes later in life. But that does not have to be the case. The impacts of ACEs can be offset by positive childhood experiences, which can help build resilience. Toronto Public Health plays a role in promoting protective factors from preconception and thought throughout child development. Shortly, we will hear from the Joanne Figliano-Scott, Chief Nursing Officer and Director of Community Health and Wellbeing, and Dr. Alison Chris, Acting Deputy Medical Officer of Health, about the various interventions we lead to prevent ACEs, as well as our co-leadership on the Ontario Early Adversity and Resilience Framework. The second and final item on our agenda today is the annual report on service agreements awarded and executed by the Medical Office of Health. These agreements allow us to deliver essential public health programs in partnership with community-based organizations, prioritizing equity-deserving populations, including seniors with low income, youth experiencing homelessness, newcomers, and communities facing barriers to care. I'm very happy to report that TPH has entered into purchase agreement with both the 519 and HQ to continue essential health promotion services previously delivered by the AIDS Committee of Toronto. This interim funding approach will take us to the end of the year, while TPH staff will examine our existing sexual health program purchase of service agreements to determine a long-term plan. And finally, I would like to acknowledge that Monday, May 12th, marks the beginning of National Nursing Week. From our sexual health clinics to the downtown core team and our extensive vaccination program, our Toronto Public Health nurses take on a myriad of roles to ensure that our residents are receiving the care they need. I extend my sincere appreciation to all the nurses of Toronto for their tireless work, day in and day out. You truly are the heart of our healthcare system. So thank you once again. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Moody for some comments.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Moyes. Welcome and thanks for joining us today, both in person and online. Today's report and presentation will touch on some key aspects of public health's work. Before we get into today's agenda, I would also like to take a moment to recognize the recent closure of the AIDS Committee of Toronto, also known as ACT. After years of delivering critical services to the community, ACT's final days of operations was on March 31st. ACT provided important services to people living with and affected by HIV in the city, including through projects supported by the Toronto Urban Health Fund. Toronto Public Health recognizes the importance of this work and has been working to ensure continuity of these services by other providers in the community. We're pleased to announce that to meet those needs, Toronto Public Health has entered into agreements with the 519 Community Centre and HQ to provide essential services in 2026, including health promotion, community-based sexual health education and outreach, and access to testing and counseling for HIV. Turning back to other reports today, we're looking at the impact of adverse childhood experiences, also known as ACEs, and the work of Toronto Public Health, the city, and our community partners that we're doing to prevent and mitigate the health impacts associated with ACEs. This report highlights the role of positive early experiences in building resilience and lifelong health, including reducing substance risk, and points to the importance of coordinated actions across city divisions and with community partners to achieve this work. This is public health working upstream and demonstrating high return on investment by preventing root causes of health outcomes. Preventing ACEs is grounded in equity, population-level interventions, evidence-informed programming, and trauma-informed practice. Early intervention is the most cost-effective public health strategy with long-term impacts on health, mental health, and substance use prevention. This approach has also been a pillar of our harm reduction strategies and captured in Our Health, Our City, a mental health substance use harm reduction and treatment strategy for Toronto that was launched in 2023. The prevention of ACEs through enhanced child and family mental health is an explicit goal of the strategy because we know ACEs increase the risk of mental health challenges and substance use later in life. And we know why it is important to prevent the initiation of substance use. In looking at our latest surveillance and monitoring data, we saw a decline in fatal opioid overdoses in 2025. However, we are continuing to see an increase in non-fatal overdoses, both opioid-related and through other contaminants, such as tranquilizers, benzodiazepines, and new, more potent synthetic opioid contaminants, reflecting the ongoing toxicity of our unregulated drug supply. Non-fatal overdoses still have significant impact, both short-term and long-term consequences for the individual experiencing the overdose, as well as their family and friends, and for the healthcare system. In February of this year, we saw the highest number of non-fatal opioid overdoses that we've seen in the past 2 years. What this tells us is that Toronto's drug supply remains toxic and that we still need as many evidence-based interventions as possible to support the prevention, care, and treatment for people who use substances. This includes harm reduction, drug checking, peer supports, and welcoming places where people who use substances can feel comfortable coming to receive immediate and long-term care and supports for their current needs and their recovery goals. We also know why preventing ACEs and increasing resilience is important for preventing family violence. In 2023, City Council declared gender-based violence and intimate partner violence as an epidemic. In the years that have followed, Toronto Public Health and the city have strengthened public health programs that support victims and survivors of intimate partner violence, including pregnant individuals and families with young children. With leadership from our city partners with Social Development's Gender Equity Division, we are developing a citywide campaign to bring greater awareness of gender-based violence and intimate partner violence through a public health and equity-focused lens. The city continues to support programs that connect residents and visitors to city and community-based resources and supports, including SafeTO and IPV data monitoring. Lastly, as Councillor Moyes mentioned, tomorrow we recognize Red Dress Day. On this day, May 5th, we observe the National Day of Awareness of Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, Trans, and Two-Spirit Plus peoples. In Canada, Indigenous women experience disproportionately high rates of physical and sexual assault in their lifetime. I encourage you all, if you are in person, to come down and visit in the lobby of City Hall a wonderful display for Red Dress Day, recognizing the harms against Indigenous women and girls who are still missing, have not been registered as missing, or have not been registered as somebody affected by violence. Thank you so much for joining today. I'll turn it back to Chair Moyes for continuing the meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Murdy. And as mentioned, we do have 2 items on today's agenda. So the first item is HL 32.1, promoting positive childhood experiences to improve health outcomes across the lifespan. We have a presentation on this item, so I will hold it down. And item 2, HL 32.2, service agreements awarded and executed by the Medical Office of Health for 2026. We do have speakers on that item, so I will hold it down as well for that reason. And so we'll go back to item HL 32.1, promoting positive childhood experiences to improve health outcomes across the lifespan. Director, Dr. Murdy, do you want to introduce the presenters?
Welcoming today this morning, we have Joanne Figliano-Scott, our Director of Community Health and Wellbeing, as well as our Nursing Officer, as well as Dr. Allison Chris, our Acting Deputy Medical Officer of Health, who will be presenting on adverse childhood experiences this morning.
Good morning. My name is Joanne Figliano-Scott, And here with me today is Dr. Allison Chris. Today we're presenting the report, Promoting Positive Childhood Experiences to Improve Health Outcomes Across the Lifespan. The report and the attachment provide information about adverse childhood experiences, protective factors, the Ontario Early Adversity and Resilience Framework, and actions that TPH is taking to mitigate ACEs.
Good morning. During the presentation, we're going to share how experiences in childhood impact health across the life course. I will start by briefly describing a few key concepts, including adverse childhood experiences, protective factors, and resilience. Joanne will then walk through the Ontario Early Years Adversity and Resilience Framework and how it applies to public health. We will close by highlighting what the City of Toronto is doing to prevent adversity in early childhood and promote positive experiences in childhood. Research has demonstrated that experiences early in life can have lifelong impacts on health and well-being. The neural connections that make up the architecture of our brains are formed on an ongoing basis, beginning before birth and continuing into adulthood. Brains are not just born, they are built over time based on experiences. In the first few years of life, children experience a period of intense brain development that provides a foundation for the way their brain develops for the rest of their life. When children have positive experiences and interactions with others, their brains grow in a way that prepares them for lifelong physical, mental, and social well-being. Experiencing some stress and learning how to cope with it are necessary for healthy childhood development. Ideally, supports help to reduce the negative impacts of stress. However, without support, adverse experiences in early life can cause a toxic stress response. The toxic stress response releases cortisol and other chemicals in the brain, which can lead to increased reactivity to future stressors. This exposure can have a wear and tear effect on the brain and the body. The term adverse childhood experiences includes stressful or potentially traumatic experiences that occur before the age of 18. These stressful and traumatic experiences can cause extreme or prolonged stress responses that is known as a toxic stress response, which can negatively impact brain development, immune function, and stress regulation, leading to negative health outcomes over time. ACEs are linked to a wide range of negative health outcomes and social outcomes, including chronic disease, such as cancer and diabetes, poor mental health, substance use, lower levels of physical activity, unsafe sexual health practices, and homelessness. This graphic describes three categories of adverse childhood experiences, which include household, community, and environment. Examples of households include physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, neglect, parental substance use or mental health concerns, parental incarceration, or witnessing domestic violence. It is important to recognize that some of these factors are also shaped by broader systemic factors, including structural racism, poverty, and inequities in the justice system, which contribute to higher exposure to adversity in some communities. Systemic inequities create the conditions that increase the risk of ACEs, which reflects the second category in the graphic, which is community. There are community and structural forms of trauma, such as poverty, racism, housing instability, colonialism, and more, which contribute to chronic toxic stress. Lastly, the environmental category includes natural disasters and climate crisis. These categories reflect not only individual experiences, but broader social and structural conditions that shape the environment where children live. Adverse childhood experiences are highly common in the general population. In Toronto, a study has found that 31% of adults report having experienced at least one type of ACE. This was a survey study done in 2019. The most common type of ACE reported was emotional abuse, followed by household violence, physical abuse, sexual abuse, and neglect. The more adversity someone faces early in life, the higher the risk for mental health challenges, chronic disease, and social stress later on. Equity-denied populations, including Black and Indigenous communities, low-income families, newcomers, 2S LGBTQ+ people, women, people with disabilities, and families impacted by the justice system. I just lost my place. Experience higher rates of ACEs, thanks Joanne, due to systemic factors such as poverty, racism, housing instability, colonialism, and inequities in the justice system. These differences are not due to individual choices, but rather reflect systemic conditions that shape access to resources and opportunities. This highlights the importance of a public health approach to prevent ACEs that prioritizes upstream interventions that address systemic inequities and promote protective interventions for equity-denied groups who are more likely to experience multiple ACEs. Given how common adverse childhood experiences are and how unevenly they affect some communities due to systemic inequities, it's important to understand what can reduce their impact. This visual illustrates resilience as a moving balance. The seesaw shifts as children's experiences change over time. As negative experiences increase, the balance tips and the risk to health rises, including longer-term outcomes like chronic disease. But the balance is not fixed. As positive supports are added, such as caring relationships, stable housing, and supportive communities, connectedness, they add weight to the other side of the seesaw, allowing children to adapt, recover, and even thrive despite adversity. When adversity cannot be fully prevented, strong supports can buffer its effects and protect health. This is the foundation of a public health approach for ACEs. We focus on upstream interventions that address systemic inequities, reduce risk, and negative experiences where possible, while also strengthening positive supports, coping skills, and emotional regulation through responsive relationships.
Toronto Public Health partnered with other Ontario public health units to co-lead the development of the Ontario Early Adversity and Resilience Framework. The framework guides public health and related sectors in the prevention of early adversity and promotion of resilience. It identifies 4 key focus areas that are important to child development and family well-being: socially connected, equitable, and inclusive communities, social and emotional development and resilience, responsive and culturally safe parenting and caregiving, and reproductive health and parenting caregiving readiness. The framework identifies 5 pathways towards implementing effective interventions in the following areas: shifting social norms, integrating upstream strategies to address the fundamental causes of health disparities, influencing healthy public policy by implementing policies that improve the built environment and encourage child and family-friendly communities, intervening to lessen harms by increasing resilience, learning skills, and providing trauma and violence-informed environments, and collecting and utilizing data. This framework emphasizes that preventing adversity requires coordinated action across sectors, not just individual level services. So now what are we doing about it? One key role public health undertakes is population health surveillance and data analysis related to ACEs. This work increases understanding of how common ACEs are, what drives them and their impacts, supporting data-informed decisions. It's important to note that there are challenges with measuring ACEs locally, as it requires analysis of multiple indicators and data sources, which is why collaboration is essential to addressing some of these data limitations. A few examples of collaborative data efforts include partnering with Social Development SAFE-TO Collaborative Analytics and Learning Environment Scale, a collaborative lab that allows the city and partners to share data, identify effective interventions, and communicate lessons to advance prevention-focused safety outcomes. Work is also underway with Public Health Ontario and the Association of Public Health Epidemiologists of Ontario on initiatives to analyze local data on adversity and resilience, including a local survey of ACEs prevalence and identification of prioritized ACEs and resilience population health indicators. We also recently hosted a research salon with Dalalana School of Public Health to explore evidence-based policies and innovative solutions that could support upstream violence prevention. I'll now provide an example to illustrate how monitoring and assessing population health data related to ACEs helps inform program planning to provide interventions. Through regular population health surveillance, data showed that the percentage of Toronto women who experience anxiety during pregnancy increased from 4.4% in 2014 to 11.3% in 2023. Through the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children screening of families with newborns, families who screen in with high levels of postpartum depression and anxiety are referred to the perinatal adjustment program. The data insights shared on TPH's Population Health Status Indicators dashboard prompted the PAP program to start using an anxiety screening tool with all new clients at intake and throughout receipt of PAP services to monitor symptoms and guide interventions. Implementation of the additional screening tool helped to identify those struggling with anxiety for appropriate intervention. In 2025, 54% of clients had a score reduction of 4 or more, which is considered a significant improvement in symptoms. All clients with either a high anxiety or a high depression score are referred to appropriate mental health services. This example shows how population health data can directly inform program changes and improve outcomes for families and children long-term. Early adversity is shaped by systems and environments, not just individual choices, which means prevention requires collaboration across sectors with city and community partners to increase access to the social and structural conditions that support health. Toronto Public Health collaborates with partners such as Social Development, Toronto Children's Services, Toronto Employment and Social Services, and Toronto Shelter and Support Services to advance collective action across sectors such as health, housing, employment, and justice. Some examples of this work include collaborating with the Poverty Reduction Office on food security initiatives, including monitoring food affordability in Toronto and the cost of living pressures for low-income households. We are also enhancing understanding of ACEs across SafeTO programs and initiatives. Another key area of collaboration is violence prevention, including intimate partner violence and gender-based violence. This work includes policy development, population-level reporting on indicators, school health programs that promote healthy relationships and sexual health education, building further awareness of intimate partner violence and gender-based violence. Through a citywide public health awareness campaign led by Social Development's Gender Equity Unit. In our direct client serving work, we establish strong referral pathways to city services and community programs so clients can access the social determinants of health such as housing, food, primary care, and other basic needs. Examples include increasing access to primary care for those that are currently unattached, and also include the Newborn OHIP Access Initiative, which helps prevent newborns from being incorrectly denied OHIP registration when parents are uninsured and connecting people without a regular healthcare provider to primary care. Together, this cross-divisional and cross-sector work helps reduce risks, strengthen protective factors, and create the conditions that support resilience. In alignment with guidance from the Ontario Early Adversity and Resilience Framework, there are many opportunities to promote protective factors that build resiliency through the life course of a child. Toronto Public Health provides services and programs across the lifespan that help promote safe, stable, and nurturing relationships and ensure a healthy start for children. Toronto Public Health offers programming beginning in the prenatal period to provide a sense of parenting readiness and address health behaviors that may increase the risk of ACEs. Toronto Public Health also conducts universal postpartum screening and outreach once the baby is born. Positive maternal mental health and responsive infant feeding are important protective factors in the perinatal period. Toronto Public Health operates 3 home visiting programs which are provided to parents who would benefit from more intensive support in order to provide a safe, stable, nurturing environment for their children. As children grow, ongoing parenting education, access to childcare and school-age programs that support healthy relationships and a sense of belonging are other vital protective factors to prevent ACEs or mitigate their impact over the life course. This includes working with school partners to help implement youth leadership programs and build resiliency through school-based peer leadership programs that create opportunities for children and youth to build confidence, strengthen relationships, and develop a sense of belonging, key protective factors that help buffer the effects of adversity. Our services work across the lifespan and across various sectors, such as education and childcare, to promote protective factors and build resilience. Healthy babies are more likely to develop into healthy children, and healthy children are more likely to grow up to be healthy teenagers and healthy adults.
I'm going to share more about how Toronto Public Health delivers clinical services to address the downstream impacts of early adversity. Toronto Public Health provides substance use, sexual health, and dental clinical services. Our programs see clients who have experienced ACEs, which is why clinical services are grounded in harm reduction and embed a trauma-informed approach to foster trust and continuity of care for clients. Trauma-informed and harm reduction approaches improve client experiences through increased psychological safety, trust, empowerment, engagement, and effectiveness of services, leading to improved outcomes. It is important that services are trauma-informed to prevent further trauma and re-traumatization. TPH recently initiated foundational training on ACEs, resilience, and trauma-informed supervision, and will continue to enhance training for staff and people leaders at Toronto Public Health. Our clinical service programs utilize a holistic approach to service delivery, and we work with clients to connect them to necessary services and programs. This can include referrals related to housing, employment, mental health, and more. Health equity is an integral and foundational component of all of our work. Monitoring health inequities and targeting services is important to advancing health equity and conducting responsible engagement, access, and protection of social demographic data is essential. Each prioritize communities most affected by systemic inequities that increase the risk of ACEs. Toronto Public Health recently started piloting the collection of socio-demographic data at breastfeeding clinics to monitor outcomes for priority populations and identify opportunities to reduce inequities. At the service level, this also involves targeted services to high-risk communities and delivering programs and supports using culturally safe and trauma-informed approaches to promote equitable access and responsiveness to diverse needs. For example, all of TPH home visiting programs prioritize equity-denied populations at greatest risk for ACEs, including young parents and those facing settlement challenges, homelessness, perinatal mental health concerns, or income instability. Another important component of the health equity work is building relationships and collaborating with Indigenous-led and Black-led community organizations. Key initiatives include establishing the Indigenous Wellness Committee and Indigenous Harm Reduction Table and partnerships with Indigenous services providers to deliver culturally grounded health services. TPH is also strengthening the programs and partnerships we have in place to support Black families and identifying priority initiatives to enhance our data collection and service delivery to support positive health and well-being outcomes for Toronto's Black communities.
If we can leave everyone today with two important takeaways, it is that early life experiences, both positive and negative, can have lifelong impacts on health and well-being. And more importantly, we can prevent and mitigate against the negative effects of early adversity by strengthening protective factors at all levels of influence, including the family level through responsive caregiving, the community level by building strong supports, and societal levels by developing equitable policies. Toronto Public Health will continue to enhance our work to prevent and mitigate ACEs in alignment with the Ontario Early Adversity and Resilience Framework and in collaboration with our partners. I want to thank my colleagues at Toronto Public Health, the city, and in community partnerships that work closely with individuals, families, and communities to build protective factors that shape lifelong health. While it's not easy work, the passion, commitment that they bring to their work each day is truly admirable and appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. I've learned a lot on this item the last few weeks. We do have speakers on this item. First up is Nicole Beaumont Christiansen. Are you here? Online? Nicole, can you hear me?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello.
You have 5 minutes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Good morning, members of the board. Nicole had another event and is unable to participate today. I'm Nicole's partner, Steph.
Sorry.
I'm here as the parent.
One moment,
Yes.
one moment.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll allow you to speak, but you'll have to give your name and information to the clerk. She cannot transfer
Absolutely.
her.
Absolutely. I'm Stefan Christensen. I'm very happy to be here today. I am here as the parent of two children. I have a 14-year-old who identifies as 2S LGBTQ+, an 11-year-old with autism. I am here since we're talking today about promoting positive childhood experiences through the Ontario Early Adversity and Resilience Framework, which is an extremely important advance. However, the provincial government's education system changes through Bill 101 may exacerbate adverse childhood experiences. So children spend a large part of their life at school. Is it okay if I share a slide? Share.
Okay, we see it.
Thank you. So Dr. Tyler Black, he's an emergency psychiatrist and Canada's leading suicide researcher. He's done research on suicidality in schools. It shows a difficult reality. Pediatric suicide death rates increased by 30 to 50% during school months and weekdays. The school environment is often a child's greatest stressor. For my children, one navigating a world not built for neurodiversity and another navigating a social climate that is increasingly hostile to queer youth, school is a high-stakes health environment. Bill 101 centralizes power, stripping our local school boards of the ability to respond to the specific needs of Toronto's diverse students. Bill 101 allows the province to override university academic freedom in teacher education and training. This means that the province can mandate a curriculum that deprioritizes diversity or mental health education by dictating curriculum from a central office. The bill also removes protective factors like the school climate surveys that help us identify bullying and safety issues on the ground, issues that the data gathering side of the adversity and resilience framework could complement. In an article in Scientific American, Dr. Black shares some suggestions and areas of focus for how to improve the mental health of students. Universal mental health literacy. We've developed incredible educational goals for math, reading, science, and the arts. There should be a dedicated pathway for equally necessary learning, how to take care of yourself, how to look out for yourself and help others, and how to improve both the detection and prevention of mental health crises. We should take bullying seriously and not just focus on the bullies. Public health data shows that both the bullied and the bullies share backgrounds of trauma. Our community of services should support both to prevent long-term psychiatric cycles. Funding are initiating local community neighborhood groups to restore the social determinants of joy. Then children will have access to play, music, and art. These aren't extras. These are biological necessities for relaxation and development. We should end a perfect attendance awards, which encourage children to ignore their physical and mental limits. We should all, from time to time, recognize when we are at our limit and we need a break. Children should also be encouraged to report when they can do so and be supported. Dr. Black also recommends reducing or eliminating homework and starting school later. We must respect children's identity and identity formation as a non-political, compassionate health requirement. Finally, we must establish mechanisms to address abuse, including teacher-led abuse, ensuring that the adults in the building are never the source of a child's trauma. Should Bill 101 pass, Toronto Public Health will likely see an increase in families, children, and young adults needing city services, community programs, and resources. Communities and guardians will be the ones left to pick up the pieces, to provide and distribute the programs and services that we know protect our children in K-12. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the deputant? Seeing none. Thank you for coming in today. Up next is Sammy Pritchard. Are you here? Online? Sammy, can you hear me?
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone, Chair and members of the board. As noted, my name is Sammy Pritchard, and I am the Director of Advocacy and Communications at YWCA Toronto, which is the city's largest multi-service organization serving women, girls, and gender diverse folks. Our services include supportive and affordable housing, shelters, childcare, a girls' center, and anti-violence services, including a 12-week parenting program for children and their mothers who have been exposed to abuse. And I want to begin by thanking you for your care and attention to this matter. The report highlights what our organization and the families we serve have long known, that childhood adversity does not exist in a bubble or have a single isolated impact, but is shaped by social, economic, and structural conditions that often carry into adulthood. Many of the children we support are experiencing multiple intersecting adversities. These experiences are often shaped by gender, race, and broader structural inequities, including barriers to immigration status. For the children and families we support, adverse childhood experiences show up in many ways. They show up as children entering shelter after fleeing a violent household, as families navigating housing precarity and migration, and as caregivers navigating trauma while trying to secure childcare, income support, and safety. When caregivers are unsafe, under constant stress, or navigating trauma without adequate support, it directly affects children's ability to feel secure, develop healthily, and flourish. So this tells us that preventing adversity for children means preventing violence and instability in the lives of caregivers as well. So we welcome the report's recognition of a coordinated trauma-informed approach across city services. However, true progress requires more than just training or minor practice changes. We must fundamentally rethink our systems to ensure that they offer dignity, trust, and flexibility. And this is especially vital for Indigenous, Black, and racialized families who face systemic surveillance and barriers to care. And the city must ensure its services offer genuine support for survivors of violence, not undue obstacles through system navigation. Gender-based and community violence are key drivers of these experiences. Children who witness violence, whether at home or in their communities, carry that trauma into their development, into their learning, their relationships, and their health journeys. For caregivers, surviving violence while parenting often means navigating systems that are designed to support safety, healing, and caregiving all at the same time. So again, from our perspective, in order to address these adverse child experiences, we need to focus on preventing them in the first place. In practice, this means ensuring safe, stable, and affordable housing, accessible childcare that supports healthy development, income security, and violence prevention, all of which are foundational to children's health and wellness and that of their caregivers. Having declared gender-based violence an epidemic, the city must now treat safety, housing, and childcare as essential public health measures. Multi-service and community organizations like ours play an important role in making this approach tangible. Services such as our housing, childcare, violence prevention, and healing support services, as well as youth gathering spaces like our Girls Center, allow us to identify adverse childhood-related needs early and strengthen preventative efforts by offering safe, stable environments and access to care. This work and that of our partners must be recognized and supported as the essential public health infrastructure that it is. To truly advance the goals of this framework, that infrastructure must be adequately resourced, stabilized, and meaningfully involved in shaping solutions. This means sustained support to the community organizations leading the work of prevention and healing. Finally, while the report acknowledges colonialism, racism, and discrimination based on identity and sexual orientation as drivers of childhood adversity, we must move beyond recognition. We need clear, accountable implementation of decolonial, anti-racist, anti-oppressive practices that are embedded in how services are designed, how they're delivered, and how they're evaluated across the city. And as a sanctuary city, we must ensure non-status residents can access these services without fear or barriers. Public health leadership is essential to aligning city divisions, agencies, and community partners around a shared trauma and violence-informed approach, and we really appreciate that this lens is recognized in the report. Again, true progress requires more than training. It demands a systemic overhaul rooted in dignity and trust, and we urge the Board of Health to adopt these recommendations to begin addressing the root drivers of childhood adversity and advance a vision for public health that identifies safety, housing, and childcare as essential protective measures, that addresses gender-based violence as a key driver of childhood adversity, ensures access to services free of barriers and fear, including for newcomers, migrants, and families with precarious status, and that sustains the community organizations that are central to prevention and healing. Thank you very much for your time and for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you. Good timing. Any questions for the deputant? Seeing none. Thank you so much for coming in today. Up next is Kelly McIntosh. Online. Kelly? Good morning, Kelly. You have 5 minutes.
Morning. As a member of Clean Indoor Air Toronto, I was encouraged to see Toronto Public Health recognize poor air quality as a contributor to adverse childhood experiences. We already understand that conditions like poverty, instability, and chronic stress can have lasting, detrimental effects on lifelong health. As we just heard in this TPH report, the physical environments in which children grow and learn are also predictive of their long-term health. One of the most important parts of that environment is the air they breathe in school every day. Improving indoor air quality in schools benefits students and education workers with fewer illnesses, fewer absences, better concentration, and stronger learning outcomes. In short, clean indoor air helps set children up for healthier, more successful lives. But these benefits are not distributed equally. Students from equity-denied communities are more likely to live in buildings and attend older schools with inadequate HVAC systems. Due to chronic underfunding, 84% of TDSB school buildings are in a state of disrepair, with many classrooms lacking mechanical ventilation and air conditioning. When air quality is poor, it doesn't affect everyone the same way. It disproportionately harms those who are already facing challenges. That makes clean air not just a health issue, but an equity issue. Without proper ventilation and effective filtration, airborne pollutants and viruses accumulate in the air we share. And without real-time monitoring, we can't assess when this air becomes unsafe. Clean indoor air protects us from pollution, wildfire smoke, allergens, and airborne infectious diseases such as measles, influenza, and COVID. Exposure can have significant health consequences. Fine particulate air pollution from sources including cars, jet planes, and industry, and climate change-related events such as wildfires, is viewed by the WHO as a leading risk factor for cardiovascular disease, asthma, and cancer. The risk of airborne disease transmission increases with poor indoor air quality, which can cause health impacts which are not mild. COVID, for example, increases the risk of heart attack and stroke, can damage the brain and other organs, and according to StatsCan, leads to long COVID in roughly 1 in 9 people. Physical health is also closely tied to mental health. When kids are constantly sick from exposure to air pollution, airborne diseases, and extreme heat, it will almost certainly impact their mental health. Despite these significant risks, public awareness remains very low. Few understand how easily airborne risks can be reduced by cleaning the air. When clear, consistent guidance is not present, misinformation fills the gap. Toronto Public Health's mandate is to support and promote the health of all Toronto residents, including students and education staff. The good news is that we know how to solve this problem with early interventions like ventilation, air filtration, indoor air quality monitoring, and wearing high-quality masks. This will pay off through better overall health, fewer illnesses, increased attendance, stronger academic outcomes, and reduced strain on our healthcare system. I thank the Board of Health for the motion to direct Toronto Public Health to review indoor air quality guidance and look forward to your report in Q3. For the present report, I ask that TPH review how the conditions within Toronto's public schools may be impacting students' physical and mental health, particularly in light of the changes being implemented by the Ministry of Education. I'm asking Toronto Public Health to take 3 key steps. First, educate. Launch a broad public awareness campaign explaining the risks of poor indoor air quality and how to improve it using these simple, effective tools. Second, advocate. Direct the adoption of indoor air quality standards for all public indoor spaces, particularly schools and childcare centers. Third, publish. Provide clear, accessible IAQ guidelines on what constitutes clean, safe-to-breathe air, and publicly monitor the carbon dioxide concentrations of classrooms and other public indoor spaces. Educate, advocate, publish. Clean indoor air protects everyone, but it is especially beneficial for those who need it most. By prioritizing clean air, we can create healthier schools, reduce inequities, improve learning, and give every child a stronger, healthier start in life. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Any questions for the Deputy? Seeing none. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you.
Next up is Debbie King. Morning, Debbie.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Debbie King, as you heard, and I'm the elected trustee representing Parkdale High Park on the Toronto District School Board. I'm here speaking as an individual today in support of the recommendations that are before you and just offering some additional perspective and context based on my experiences. It's very encouraging to see the potential endorsement of Ontario's Early Adversity and Resilience Framework and how it can be used to build on public health initiatives and collaboration with external partners. Since we understand that early experiences have such a powerful influence on lifelong health and the significant amount of time that children spend in school, I really appreciate the report's recognition of the relationship between learning conditions and the mitigation of ACEs, and we heard one of the speakers speak to that a bit earlier, as well as the shared responsibility and the acknowledgement of public health's work, requiring very close collaboration with city partners such as school boards on initiatives that advance these goals. So given that, it is relevant then to consider the learning conditions in school environments, especially when they are contrary to the goals within the framework and promoting the positive experiences that we're working toward. So what I'm sharing today are concerns about the learning conditions in Toronto schools that are already arising or have the potential to arise based on recent and proposed regulations from the Ministry of Education. My remarks focus attention on some of the equity-denied groups who are disproportionately impacted by ACEs, as we saw in the slide presentation. So, according to the framework, sources of adversity include consistent exposure to structural forms of trauma, including racism and poverty. At the same time, the Ontario Human Rights Commission's Dreams Delayed report, that's a report on addressing anti-Black racism in Ontario schools, it asserts that racial discrimination and harassment continue to cast a shadow over the lives of Black children and youth in our schools. And this is relevant because there are changes within Ontario's Bill 33, Bill 101, and also decisions that are being made by a ministry-appointed supervisor at the board that could see even greater sources of adversity and also result in reduced access to services and supportive relationships. So just to give you a few short examples, Bill 33 mandates school resource officer programs in Toronto schools. This is something that Ontario Human Rights, the Ontario Public School Board, and Ombudsman Ontario have all cautioned against because of the historical harm to Indigenous and Black students in particular. As well, Bill 101, which was referenced earlier, if passed, we could see school climate surveys and research by the Higher Education Quality Council of Ontario cease. And what that would mean is a loss of data collection about student experiences, as well as equity-centered recommendations from an external body that have proven to be very effective in identifying and responding to systemic discrimination in our schools. And then lastly, under ministry supervision of the board, we've seen significant staff support positions cut for the upcoming 2026-27 school year. And I know that among the community, there is quite a bit of concern that based on the financial pressures, we might see further cuts, including the potential loss of the Model Schools for Inner City program. Model schools are programs that are informed by the Learning Opportunity Index, and they're designed to enhance equity and well-being in areas that are facing financial challenges and limited access to resources. So the loss of these programs would reduce, again, quality programming and supportive relationships for families as well in some of the highest area needs of the city. So these are just a few examples, and just considering the obligation of governments and social services to implement interventions that prevent early adversity, I think that all of this can be very helpful as you continue to consider how you support children in that school age period of the lifespan. And what I would suggest is, if you're not already using it as a tool, the TDSB Learning Opportunity Index could be very useful as another data source, just to help you target, where you apply those upstream interventions and services, as well as a review of the impacts that Bill 33 is having on school environments and how it's changing the effects of the school and children's experiences in school. So I think I'm just over the time, but thank you so much for the consideration.
Yes, thank you, Debbie. You have one question from Councilor Bravo.
Sure.
Thank you. It's nice to have a trustee here with us, and welcome. I understand, I've heard from a few trustees with concerns about the publication, whether there will be publication of the Learning Opportunities Index, and how important that is, obviously, for how the board makes its decisions, including on model schools. Is that something you've been hearing yourself?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Bravo. It absolutely is. In the absence of public meetings and with trustees sidelined from the role, there's not an opportunity to understand where this report is, how it's being distributed or utilized across the system, and again, just with the pattern of types of decisions that we're seeing under ministry supervision, there's concern that we won't see the same attention to the kinds of programming and allocations that were informed by that data.
So the key challenge here is, if we're not able to see how the Learning Opportunities Index, is it being collected, how is it being used, and have it be publicly available. It's been an important tool, not just for decision makers at the board, but also for trustees as representatives of the public and for parents. I'm a parent of 3 children that went to model school for inner city, so I understand this very well, and I was on the inner city advisory committee at the board for a long time. What do you think is lost when the public, parents, are still elected representatives, and in general other institutions and organizations are not able to understand or see the outcomes of this measurement of inequity?
There's a level of transparency and accountability that is lost, again, because the information is not accessible. There's not the opportunity to understand and to advocate for how it might be used. One of the other changes that we've seen is a community advisory committee that specifically addresses inner city issues has also been sidelined. So, for over 10 months now, we haven't had the benefit of external partners, organizations, parents, that have a very particular lens in this area and would normally participate in reviewing that kind of information, making recommendations to the board for consideration. None of that is happening in the current situation. So again, just the loss of that transparency and information is hindering our ability to participate and to make sure there's accountability for providing the supports that our students need for all of the reasons that have been discussed here.
Thank you. I was a co-chair of that Inner City Advisory Committee, which oversaw the initiatives, and I know that there were Toronto Public Health staff there, there were city staff in other divisions, foundations, academics, including parents and trustees, so really appreciate you coming here today and talk to us about where we're headed, and this tool, at least would be, I think, of interest, being able to see that for this Board of Health, and I'll be moving a motion to that effect. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Director Zhao, go ahead.
Thank you for the informative talk today. I actually just wanted to learn more about the school climate survey. You mentioned two different surveys being administered. One is the Learning Opportunities Index, and then the other one is School Climate Survey. Can you talk to us a little bit more about what the School Climate Survey measures and why it's so important?
Absolutely, and thank you for that question as well. So the school climate survey is administered to students. So it's one of the few opportunities that we have to hear directly from students right across the K-12 experience. And it measures everything from their sense of belonging to experiences as bullying. And it can capture the kind of information that's not normally captured in other structured forms. So again, it's just very useful to understand from their perspective what they're actually experiencing. That sense of belonging is foundational, we know, to academic success, to a sense of well-being, and would definitely have overlaps between some of the ACEs that we're hearing today as well. So again, the evidence-based information and data collection is really critical to be able to allocate resources, identify programs, and continue that kind of positive work.
Do you know that with Bill 101, is it going to be replaced with a different form of data collection that addresses the positive experiences, the bullying, or is it just no data being collected at all?
A great question. It's one I would have had for the Minister of Education if there were more time to provide feedback and question with him. Right now, the way the bill is written, and if it passes, there's not a requirement for the survey anymore. So it puts into question whether or not it would be utilized, and if it's not, whether or not there is, as you said, an alternative measure of collection. There's no mention of one in the bill, so that's what raises the concern that we're really losing an opportunity for some data-driven kind of information to help inform decisions.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I have a question myself. So in your deputation, you mentioned the SRO program. And I know that there's evidence that shows that Black and Indigenous students are mainly harmed by the SRO program. And while I was there, I know that at the TDSB, the program came to an end. Is there any steps for that to continue? Do you know what the supervisor or the school board is now, what the stance is on that?
So again, because trustees have not been engaged with the board since June 30th of 2025, there have not been any official conversations or information shared with us as a governance body. My understanding, based on information shared through the media, is that the Toronto Police are not interested in resuming this program. However, that doesn't mean that there wouldn't be some other type of program under a different name or branding. It doesn't mean that there aren't conversations happening at the staff level. We simply don't have that information. And again, the concern would be that this was a program that was canceled by the TDSB for all of the reasons that we've discussed and that I think you're aware of. And with trustees not in a governance role and a ministry-appointed supervisor in the place, we could see different decisions made under that leadership.
Thank you so much. Seeing no other questions from directors, thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, everyone.
Next up is Sandra Hugh, H-U-H, online. Sandra, can you hear me?
Everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Sandra Ha, and I'm a parent of a child in the public funded school in Toronto. I'm also director with the Ontario Autism Coalition. I'm here today to speak on the promoting of positive childhood experiences to improve healthy outcomes across the lifespan. I am deeply concerned that for many students with special needs, our school environments are not promoting positive experiences, and they are actually contributing to adverse ones. Children spend the majority of their day at school, just like a few of my previous delegates have mentioned. And for many, it's, their primary source of socializing and dealing with their days. In the special needs community, we know that early intervention and supportive environments lead to better lifelong outcomes. Unfortunately, that's not what many students are experiencing right now. Students with special needs often face bullying, lack of appropriate academic and behavioral supports, and inequitable expectations around attendance, not because they're unwilling, but because schools are unable to meet their needs. They're also at risk of physical harm due to inadequate supervision. We see students eloping from school buildings or being placed on what we call modified schedules that limit access to their education. These are not isolated incidents. They are systemic issues that deny students meaningful and equitable access to learning. As Ontario's publicly funded schools continue to be underfunded, these challenges are worsening. Students are being excluded, sometimes informally, due to the lack of staff and safe environments. Crowded classrooms and larger classes further compound this issue. Students on the autism spectrum and those with other disabilities are regularly excluded from classroom activities, school trips, and everyday learning experiences. Data from the Ontario Autism Coalition's 2025-2026 education survey shows that 26% of autistic students are now on what we call modified schedules. It's a significant 7% increase from last year. Additionally, 74% of families report at least one safety concern during the school year, including bullying or elopement, which means running away from school. These aren't just statistics, they reflect the real harm to children. To address this, I urge the Board of Health to consider the following. Debbie mentioned the collection of data. And, we feel also that the formal and informal exclusions need to be tracked along with disability and accommodation context. Secondly, restore funding for play-based learning, arts, music, and physical activity. These aren't just extras, they're essential, especially for students with sensory and developmental needs. Thirdly, perfect attendance awards, which unfairly penalized students, should no longer be in play. They can't actually go to school without those proper support. So it really is something that is difficult for special needs families. Increasing the needs-based education funding so boards can actually hire more trained support staff and meet their legal obligations under the Education Act. And also protecting the democratic oversight and transparency within school boards. As Debbie mentioned, we are not seeing anything from school boards currently due to the, lack of transparency of supervisor that we have in play right now. We also encourage the use of calming and exclusion rooms with clear enforceable standards so that they can be safely used by students who need them. We also would hope that the implementation of the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act education standards has some accountability and some timelines attached to that. And finally, as Debbie mentioned previously, removing policing from schools and instead invest in social workers, child and youth workers, and other paraprofessionals who can build supportive relationships with students. I respectfully ask that the Board of Health direct Toronto Public Health to update its report to reflect these recommendations that I've just stated. And I also ask the City Council to send a letter to the Ministry of Education, Paul Calandra, and the Minister of Health, Sylvia Jones, recognizing that underfunding in education is contributing to adverse childhood experiences for students in Toronto. Our schools should be places where all children feel safe and supported and be able to thrive. Right now, too many are not. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra Ha. Any questions for the Deputant? Seeing none. Thank you for coming in today. Mary Sharp? Good morning. No, just swipe until it turns green. The base of the mic, swipe it until it turns green.
Now, can you hear me? Okay, good. Thank you so much. Okay. For over 5 decades, I worked as a healthcare practitioner with pregnant and lactating women. I have great respect for the complex physiologic processes of pregnancy, birth, lactation, and early infancy, evidence-based practice, bodily autonomy, and informed choice. Today, I specifically wish to speak to the issue of sudden, unexpected infant deaths and public health consideration around efforts to reduce these deaths. On the personal side, I gave birth to 6 children between 1970 and 82 and breastfed them well into toddlerhood. The children were very healthy, and I remember only once using antibiotics for a sickness in their preteen years. I followed common sense. At night, as young infants, they were nursed and slept soundly in our bed. I didn't pay much attention to how they were positioned when they slept. Certainly in the day, they were placed on their tummies when they slept, usually on a sheepskin. I noticed that by using all 4 limbs, they were able to lift their heads up and from side to side, and they crawled very early. Thus, as a parent and health professional, I was very surprised and somewhat shocked to learn about the Back to Sleep, later called Safe to Sleep campaign, launched in 1994 in the United States and 1999 in Canada, with the goal of reducing SIDS, or sudden infant deaths, sudden unexpected infant deaths. This campaign suggested that all infants be placed on their backs to sleep, that they should sleep alone and should avoid sleeping on soft surfaces. Some of this advice seemed sensible and intuitive, such as infants not sleeping on pillows and soft surfaces, and later that cigarette smoke should be avoided and that breastfeeding was protective against SIDS. But sleeping alone and having to sleep on their backs, for me, was not. A flurry of materials and programs flooded pregnant and new parents with this advice. There have been many studies to suggest that the Back to Sleep initiative was highly successful and led to a 50% reduction in sudden infant deaths. Critics say that some of the reduction of the SIDS numbers may have been caused by reclassifications of how infant deaths were being reported, as well as by the recent increase in breastfeeding, an area so highly supported by you folks, by Toronto Public Health, and by our national agencies. However, I think it's very important to consider that the peak age for SIDS, 2 to 4 months, is the same time infants receive their first round of routine vaccines. A 2011 and a 2020 study analyzing the vaccine adverse event reporting system data from 1990 to 2019 in the US noted that 75% of reported SIDS cases occurred within 7 days of vaccination. However, the CDC and other experts in the states state that the VAERS is a self-reporting system and that this clustering is a temporal association rather than a causal one. Often cited to support this lack of connection of SIDS with vaccines are the GESID study, German study on infant death, done by 2007 by Veneman et al., which showed no link between vaccination and SIDS. This multi-center research project was co-funded by Sanofi and Merck. This is with pharmaceutical industry money. This doesn't necessarily invalidate the findings, but industry co-funding in vaccine safety research is certainly a conflict of interest that should be disclosed clearly when citing these papers. It's vital to continue to collect and analyze data on every aspect of deaths that do occur, from the medical history information of the babies. but to question vaccines is seen as irresponsible, rash, and dangerous, even though the Public Health Agency of Canada's own documents attest to the many adverse events of vaccines. Regardless, in their public-facing messages and in yours, these concerns are not highlighted but seemingly dismissed in favor of a belief in the greater good of vaccines. This direction has undermined transparency. I think it's the role of any healthcare agency to provide transparent, clear, and evidence-based information about the pros, cons, risks, benefits, and uncertainties of any aspect of care so that informed choices can be made. Let us reevaluate and be open to the possibility that sudden, unexplained infant deaths could be caused by vaccines given in the first few months of a child's life. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, thank you. Skylar Hale-Jackson.
May I have the overhead, please?
Just put the item
Go on the overhead. Last time I was here, it didn't go on.
Just put it on. There we go. Okay, you have 5 minutes.
Toronto Public Health delivers programs and services to enhance the health and well-being of children to improve health outcomes. According to this report, early experiences have a powerful influence on lifelong health, and exposure to early adversity is associated with a negative long-term health and social outcomes, including chronic disease and mental health challenges. There is a childhood health crisis. Toronto children are suffering from a variety of lifelong chronic illnesses, as well as neurodivergent issues such as autism, ADHD, and dyslexia. Current data shows 1 in 10 children have ADHD, 1 in 36 children are on the autism spectrum, mostly boys, and 2 to 5 children in every Ontario classroom has dyslexia. This is pretty shocking. How are Toronto parents and Toronto teachers coping with such a neurodivergent generation of children? In 2024, CAMH revealed a worrying decline in overall mental health among Ontario students. 51% of students indicated a moderate to serious level of psychological distress, a figure that has doubled over the past decade. What is the root cause for our sickest generation? Can all the Toronto Public Health programs and services stop the steep decline of children's health and improve childhood health outcomes? It is well known that children are born with immature immune systems. Children must encounter infections one by one to build immunity. If children must encounter infections one by one to build immunity, then why do Ontario children get multiple combined vaccines in one shot? There are 75 doses of 18 vaccines recommended for Ontario children, and 7 vaccines are recommended for pregnant women. Everything crosses the placenta and the blood-brain barrier of the unborn baby. Where are the safety studies proving these vaccines are safe for children and pregnant women? Could vaccines cause a toxic stress response in children? Toronto Public Health is focused on providing a healthy start for children by meeting the objective to reduce the burden of chronic and infectious diseases and prioritizing effective interventions for children and youth. Are board members aware that there are hundreds of evidence-based, peer-reviewed studies showing that unvaccinated children are healthier than vaccinated children? Something is causing our children to be the sickest generation. It is time for the Toronto Board of Health to step aside and allow parents to make educated and informed health decisions for their families. Vaccinating is one of the most important decisions a responsible parent is required to make for the long-term health of their child. One mistake early on, and the brain and the body of their child may be forever changed. It is heartening to see that Toronto Public Health has expanded their individual and group-based in-person and online workshops to support healthy pregnancies, birth outcomes, and preparation for parenthood, and that new mothers have access to a number of breastfeeding clinics. what is most surprising is how board members appear to be thoughtful, logical, cautious, curious, and advocates for truth, transparency, accountability, and informed consent, except when it comes to vaccination. It is time to end vaccine mandates for children to attend school and remove the need for exemption forms. It is time to end vaccine clinics in schools. It is time to empower families to make voluntary and informed health decisions. It is time to support individuals in their right to informed consent and health freedom. Warning, if you don't think for yourself, someone will do it for you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bravo has a question for you.
I thank you for all of the deputants that come. However, I would like to request that when you refer to people not as neurodivergent, that you consider neurodiversity. Have you thought of the implications of your words and how you're pathologizing children when you say that we're the most sick that they're the most sick generation?
Actually, I took that word from you at the last meeting because you used it when you waved your hands around and said there could be autistic people in this room.
I said neurodiverse.
Neurodivergent.
No, I said neurodiverse. And just for your information, are you aware that Einstein had both dyslexia and ADHD? So
yes,
perhaps
everybody is.
So let's just consider that when advocating for your position, perhaps you should think about not venturing into that area, because while it's your right to obviously to come and speak to us, some of us are parents or have family members or ourselves in that situation, the brilliance it can result, and it doesn't matter. To say that this is a throwaway generation, I think is very unfortunate.
It's not a throwaway generation. The problem is that no one is facing the facts of the problems around vaccinations. They're giving vaccinations to 2-month-old, 4-month-old, and 6-month-old babies based on no safety studies.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm seeing no further questions. Nicole Corrado, are you here online? Nicole, can you hear me?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, 5 minutes.
A couple of things I would like to say. I do not suffer from autism, and my autism was not created by vaccines, nor was my ADHD created by vaccines. It was something I was born with. It's something that's genetic. It's something that's been in my family for a while. So I just want to clear that up and clarify that people do not suffer from autism or ADHD. It's just something they have. It's something they always have. And what I would like to say is that autism is not caused by adverse childhood experiences. However, if an experience that might not be so adversive to a neurotypical person is going to be far more adversive to a person on the autism spectrum, because a person on the autism spectrum is going to perceive everything, very sensitive, is going to perceive everything a lot more acutely. I feel everything a lot stronger. Everything sounds are a lot louder. I'm still bothered by a lot of things. So, an adverse childhood experience would have been, they had this big balloon pop. I don't know if it was like 4 or something at a shopping mall, and they would drop a bunch of balloons. Everyone would just be popping them to get coupons. It was absolutely traumatic. It was like bombs going off. It was, and I'd never been in a war, but it was an adverse childhood experience. Having someone in a play group because they didn't want to touch paint, grabbing my hands and shoving them in the paint. Those were adverse childhood experiences, and they're things that maybe wouldn't traumatize a neurotypical child, but they traumatized me. And those are the kind of things that, and even then, my behavior. I would have meltdowns and stuff. I would bite people, and I heard my mother saying, "Oh, I wonder if she's a psychopath," and that really hurt. My mother loves me; she's a wonderful mother, but wonderful. I have wonderful parents, but she back then did not know about autism, and I hadn't even been diagnosed yet. She didn't know what I was. I'm actually the opposite of a psychopath. I'm extremely sensitive. But it's those kind of little things where a person, has meltdowns in public, and, the parent says, oh, this is because they're autistic. And then they associate autism with shame, or they associate autism with their worst moments. These are the kind of things that we need to bear in mind. And unfortunately, a lot of the quote treatments for autism are very fear and shame based. ABA is controversial because it tries to make a person look neurotypical, and it's quite harmful for a lot of people. Even the modern ABA, because it tries to make autism, a person feel shamed about the autism, and that is aversive. So for a child to be made to feel shameful for who they are, and it's constantly bombarded with sensory assault, is just, it's aversive. And you're absolutely right that it's not caused by the vaccines or by anything else, but it is. But it's just that a person on the autism spectrum. Oh, and the other thing is, in schools, a lot of children are also bullied a lot, and that's aversive. I was homeschooled, so thankfully I didn't have to go through that. But I've heard of a lot of people who've gone through a whole lot of bullying, and from being in school. So yeah, it's you need to be working with autistic people, and that was one community, the autistic community. I would suggest working with A4A, Autistics for Autistics, and also YAGE, the Youth Alliance for Intersectional Justice, to work more on neurodivergent community.
Okay, thank you very much, Nicole. Any questions for Nicole? Seeing none. Okay, we're going to take in-house to directors. Any questions of staff? Councillor Bravo?
I just wanted to follow up on the deputation from school trustee about the collection, production, and use and publication of the Learning Opportunities Index, and just to quickly ask how it is used and by Toronto Public Health, and whether it's important to ensure that we have that data to assess whether our interventions are where they're needed and whether they're delivering and succeeding.
To you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for the question. We do use Learning Opportunity Index to assess where the greatest need is in the community. We use it together with a number of other data sets. And Toronto Public Health takes a proportionate universalism approach to providing services in schools, and that helps us, together all that data helps us determine where we should be providing more intensely services to the schools with the highest need.
Thank you. And in terms of significant new programs, for example, the school nutrition program, would it be helpful to have that information to be able to, for example, evaluate later, as this is a population level intervention?
I'm going to ask my colleague Myron to just respond. Thanks.
Hi. In terms of for the school-based S&P-based programs, initially, if you recall, pre-expansion, there was limited funding opportunities. So as such, when those funding opportunities were there, we were basically essentially using that index to say who would be, lack of a better term, deserving of those funds opportunities. As we moved to Universal for phase 1 and phase 2, we tackled it from an LOI approach as well as school readiness to maximize the efficiency of the funding opportunities we received. As we move through phase 2, phase 3, and now as we go to phase 4, the LOI is becoming less critical as we're moving to Universal, so every school is going to get that program. When we look at future opportunities, is there a means where we can return to an LOI to look at different opportunities? For sure there is, but for now, it was basically pre-expansion for phase 1 and 2 as well.
So it's been helpful in terms of identifying need in the past. And if there is opportunities for the future, we would continue to rely on it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's it? Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Dr. Zhao?
Thank you both for your informative presentation. I've actually personally referred some of my patients to the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program, and they found that the lactation consultant services to be extremely helpful. I guess my question is, how do you screen people for the perinatal adjustment program and for the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program? Is it done at the hospital level, like when a child is born, the obstetricians will identify individuals at risk, or is it usually screened by their family physicians? And I ask this because not very many family physicians know about the program. I happen to know about it because I'm on the board, but what is being done to identify more participants in this very helpful program?
Thank you, Director Zhao. To the chair, so Healthy Babies, Healthy Children is a universal program. We do aim to reach every single child that is born, and that is usually at the time of hospital that they would complete an initial screening that looks for a range of issues, both from the mom, from the family situation, from baby, for risk factors. If there's anything identified on that screen to indicate either mood or anxiety disorder, then they would be referred to the perinatal adjustment program to have a more in-depth assessment and referral. We know, unfortunately, we don't reach every single baby through the HBHC program. We're working with our hospital partners to make sure we're getting a better completion rate, that we are reaching individuals then, or sometimes they did screen in, but then maybe didn't want the program and so need to kind of re-enter. And that's certainly, we would, HBHC can go up to 3 years old and beyond. So providers who maybe they forgot about it and they want to re-refer, they can re-refer, but we do try at that initial assessment through that first screening to identify families who might be eligible for the perinatal adjustment program.
Just a quick follow-up question. So sometimes I have delivered babies who come from moms who might use opioids, or babies with like fetal alcohol syndrome. And so in those situations, if the physician identifies there is a need, would the physician inform the social worker to refer to this program? Or I was just wondering, what is the process of getting connected?
To the chair, so the perinatal adjustment program is particularly focused on mood and anxiety disorder. So it doesn't, we don't have the complexity. We don't have physicians on board to handle substance use. So they could refer, but we typically would be looking for helping families make other referrals to more specialist programs for substance use care. We do have a number of hospital partnerships who have more perinatal specialist care for more complex mood or substance use disorders, because that's certainly outside of the scope of what our nursing providers would be able to offer.
Got it. And just one final question, just for my own knowledge. Do you work with CAS? Is that like a source of referrals for you guys?
To the chair, yeah, we do have a partnership and work closely with Children's Aid Services through our children's partners as well. Certainly, our goal is really to work with families, and that's not the first place we typically have families enter the program. We like to be able to identify all families. We're trying to screen every family to see where they might need it. Some of the families we work with are involved with Children's Aid Services. Unfortunately, many of the families who come through our Homeless at Risk pregnancy program have involvement with Children's Aid Services as well, and we do help to try to support those families as best as we can through that entire process. But I'll turn it over to our director if you want to add further.
Yeah, no, I think you covered the majority of it, but a lot of the work that the teams do across Healthy Babies, Healthy Program and the Perinatal Adjustment Program is really through partnerships and building those strong referral pathways. So we put a lot of emphasis on building those so we can direct people that need more clinical intervention as quickly as possible into the system. And I'll just add that in terms of the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program, while we do screen everybody and we try and identify the highest risk, we also do send communications to all families that we do receive a screen for. That way they are connected should something come up down the road in terms of requiring additional supports or questions about other things, as parenting takes its own journey, they would be able to connect back with Toronto Public Health.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll now go to Councillor Jones-Lynn and then Councillor Thompson after that. Go ahead, Councillor Jones-Lynn.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I just had I want to go in a slightly different direction. In the report, there is a discussion about monitoring cell phone use. And I wanted to inquire because we're starting to see more and more very serious concerns raised around cell phone addiction, not just around young people, specifically around young people, but also in adults as well. And the dangers also associated with social media, but leading to adverse effects in terms of mental health and well-being among young people, depression, anxiety, etc. So I just wondered if you could speak a little bit more broadly as to how Toronto Public Health is approaching this, whether you're working with the school boards or the Ministry of Health the Ontario Ministry of Health around this. And I just wondered if you could expand, I guess, a little bit on beyond sort of the monitoring, what we're doing.
To the chair, thanks for that question. We did add at a previous Board of Health meeting when we presented on our school partnerships and the renewal of our partnerships with the 4 Toronto school boards, looking at some of the foundational work we want to do. We did add specifically looking at things like digital health, social media use, cell phone use as part of that work. So that is an active conversation we do have with our school board partners as we meet with them quarterly to really look at the impacts of this, other ways we can be supporting their implementation of things like cell phone bans in schools, how we can be also sharing information to school communities about ways that they can prevent harms at the individual, family, school, and also societal level. We certainly worked with groups like Unplugged Canada, who've been championing a number of ways that we can be really thinking about how to mitigate some of the impacts of social media and digital technology use for children, for younger children. So we have a number of initiatives underway that was through a board direction from the fall on this, but I will also just turn it over to our director if they want to add anything else we're working on, haven't covered.
Yeah, I think there's other interventions that we're doing to also increase awareness. So incorporating key messages and raising awareness about some of the impacts of cell phone use in some of our parenting programs directly with families, as well as we're building out our sedentary movement strategy. So encouraging people to get more active, sharing messages around the importance of monitoring cell phone use and digital use.
Okay. Any further questions, Councillor Jocelyn?
I guess I would just also add to that one of the other areas that I think we need to be paying attention to, and I suspect you are, but is gambling addiction, particularly as an online harm, because we certainly see that as a rising addiction issue, particularly with boys. And so I guess I'm looking to see more of that in the future here, just because I am extremely concerned about that. And I think we need to be monitoring, but also going beyond to see how we can partner and make sure we're making a dent in trying to address these really critical issues that are affecting our young people.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you, and good morning, Mr. Chair and everyone. Mr. Chair, it's not often that I read a report that just really makes my heart feel amazing, and I'll say the word giddy, because of the focus here on children and diversity and so on. I just wanted to ask a series of questions, but what I'd like to do, with your permission, Mr. Chair, is just to ask the questions altogether. There's probably about 4 or 5 of them. I'll maybe just narrow it down to 4. It's a collection of questions, and I'll give staff the opportunity to respond as they see fit. But before I do that, I just wanted to thank the staff for an amazing report, and Dr. Murphy for her leadership and so on. This is just really, really important stuff, quite frankly. So my first question will be, how will the success in preventing and mitigation of ACS be tracked? And the second question, again, I'm asking all the questions together, and the staff can respond accordingly. What indicators are we looking for to understand the improvements in child health and outcome across the city? And further, what research are are basing this information on? How will the stats be collected? And then I also wanted to understand, do we have categorize information stats based on ward breakdown, and in order to help us to better understand the needs of children in specific areas across the city, and then to compare them, because I would imagine that there are some unique differences in as much as we're a large city and so on. And then finally, what outcomes have been achieved previously through partnerships that demonstrates the impact in promoting proactive childhood experience? It's a collection of questions I've asked. I'll just leave that for the staff to basically answer it in a broad way, and I'd appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the staff.
Thank you for the questions to the chair. I'll try to, I think I captured them all. So I think the first one is a really important question because it's not easy, to measure both how are we doing in changing the number of ACEs that children might be experiencing, but also I think more importantly is how are we measuring the impact of this, and are we actually showing that children are more resilient moving into the future? We can't prevent all ACEs, we know that, but how do we show that the interventions are making children more resilient and bending the curve on some of the long-term health outcomes that we have? So we do have a number of surveys that we look at on a regular basis. So things like the Ontario Student Drug Use Mental Health Survey, that's connected through CAMH on a regular basis. We have school behavior surveys that are regularly reported on. We did just hear from the trustee in terms of things like the school climate survey, which is a very important survey to us as well. We don't get the data from that, but we certainly are able to discuss the results of that with our school partners. We would love to be able to get the data from the school climate survey to be able to have that, especially if it was to continue, or a version to continue into the future, to say, how on a more real-time basis, does every child in a school have a trusted adult in the school that they could feel like they could talk to? How do we actually sort of measure in that real-time way the kinds of resilient supports that would make a difference? And then hopefully start to see a shift in some of the mental health outcomes that we're seeing. We know that we had, really negative trajectories through the COVID pandemic in terms of seeing a declines in youth mental health. And I think, embracing the strategy is not going to change overnight, but how over the next years we can start to see that the investments we're making in children and youth now start to improve some of those outcomes, that children do feel more supported, that they have better access to care, that we can start to see those improved pathways, that people are not waiting for services in the same way that they have been. So I think that that's an important question, and I think certainly an area we continue to work with a number of partners on. We did have that research salon with a number of academics to help us think through some of the ways we can continue to measure that. In terms of the ward breakdowns, we are always trying to get data as local as possible. So we have been working with our colleagues at social development in their space to look through the ways we can combine many of the different data pieces that we have, looking at things like justice, family settings, violence, different factors, to have that as hyper-local as possible. Not everything can be local. We did recently invest in a survey to look at the prevalence of ACEs in Toronto, and unfortunately we didn't get the sample size to be able to look at some of the results in as narrow a way as we'd like to. So we are going to still continue to investigate how we can do that better to try to get more local information. But what we do have, we're certainly working with as many partners we can to answer that. And I think a good example of, an outcome of partnership where we've seen real success on this and where, where we're going forward is the work of what we've been doing. We had a really successful presentation of the ACEs framework with our SafeTO table, and really being able to share with all the partners there, the importance of understanding the impact of ACEs and a resiliency framework. And we saw, a shift that folks and the TCHC, for example, we're now really, thinking differently about how they're responding to calls when they have crisis calls within TCHC, and recognizing, what if there are children in that home? How are they thinking about providing support so that that's not a traumatic experience, or if there has been a traumatic experience, how are they connecting those families to better respond to the family needs in those situations? So I think we were seeing some real shifts in the way that our city partners are practicing as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Chang, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I have just a few questions. Do we measure ACEs in our vulnerable intake? So when people are getting harm reduction, or when they are receiving service in our shelters, is there a time where we have conversations with our clients about ACEs and the potential impact on their lives, and therefore potential pathways of healing?
Thank you very much for the question. To the chair, there is not a systematic way in which we assess for ACEs as part of our harm reduction and clinical activities currently. Certainly in the course of, the engagement we have in the client, these things may arise, and, as appropriate, we, do have processes in place to ensure referrals to the right, place to receive further support. But, certainly we could take that back and take a look at how that might be done in a more structured manner.
Mm-hmm. At what age do you think it would be helpful for people to realize the impacts of adverse childhood experiences they may have had? Because not all people have grown up with this lens, but certainly many people have gone through these type of experiences.
To the chair, I would have to take that back and sort of say, is there a specific age? I think what we're part of what the framework really tries to promote is a whole of society lens to this, that this is not something that, families can do, this is not something a school can do, this is not something just a single community do, but we really need all partners to understand and embrace how much adverse childhood experiences has an impact on lifelong trajectory. And so I think through that whole society model, there's sort of different levels of awareness of this. So as younger children, sort of understand it and hear about it, that they, will have more of a readiness as they get older to kind of rethink about experiences that they've had, as really leaning into the positive experiences and how we can really support those types of ways of supporting resilience, developing resilience, to having better pathways for families to have a better outcome. And so I don't know that there's a specific age. We can take a look at that, but I think really embracing the whole of society component to it.
Is there a suggested tool for assessment that people could use to understand the impact of ACEs on their lives?
To the chair, so as mentioned, we recently did conduct a survey in partnership with Public Health Ontario and other health units to try to get a better sense of ACEs. And we actually did have a lot of deliberation in developing this tool. There's a real mixed feeling in terms of the experts in this field as to the best way to ask about ACEs without re-traumatizing individuals, even as adults, that asking these kinds of questions can be very triggering, very difficult to answer, feel, that this is a difficult thing that people don't want to participate in. And really, how do we ask those questions in a way that also balances asking about their positive experiences so that we do get a more fulsome picture of an individual's experience? So we did have a long run up to how we ask those questions. And I think that there's still probably a lot of ongoing research we need to do to be able to really think about the best ways to measure this and monitor it going forward.
So there's no public-facing tool. If somebody who, was thinking, I wonder if this impacts me, there's no public-facing tool where they could do a self-assessment.
So to the chair, we do have information available, and I think the early introduction of the Ontario Adversity Framework does do a nice job of explaining what ACEs are. So things like physical and emotional abuse, things like parental separation, things like having a parent who's been incarcerated, things like parent who has a serious mental health or substance use disorder. So I think talking about what they are is a way of people can recognize in themselves what types of ACEs that they may have experienced in their life without necessarily having them to respond in a way that is triggering or trying to collect it in a too narrowly defined way that just boxes their experience as opposed to the more fulsome understanding of their intersectionality of experience.
I have just one last question. In the US, I noticed that there's a few organizations that actually focus on this issue: the American Society of Positive Care of Children, ACEs Aware, and the Hope National Research Center. And I'm just wondering if there's any parallel organizations here in Toronto or in our country that are focused on ACEs.
I'm just checking with my colleagues here. Thank you for the question. We are not aware of any parallel organization here. We are excited that the Early Adversity and Resilience Framework does bring together a community of practice to share the latest research and evidence and share innovations as well and things to try.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you so much.
Director Madara, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I wanted to echo what everyone else has been saying about the fabulous work that's gone into the report. I really enjoyed reading it. I had some questions. One of the things that I also really appreciated was the focus on partnerships with Indigenous organizations, with First Nations and UMAT communities within the city. I actually have 2 questions. My first question that I'm curious about is how this work reflects or embeds Indigenous determinants of health. So I'm thinking of things like connection to land, culture, language, community. I'm wondering how those determinants are being embedded in Toronto Public Health's understanding of the framework and is complementary and really embedded in the work that you're doing in this area.
To the chair, thank you for that question. I think all of those things you listed are really wonderful examples of resilience. And if you saw the graphic of the negative experiences and the positive experiences, and really trying to champion things that are culturally meaningful to those families, to say, being able to connect with land, being able to connect with culture, being able to re-engage with language are all examples of positive experiences that can help really, try to rebalance those negative experiences that might be experienced from a history of colonialism and a history of social and structural determinants of health. So I think we do recognize, the importance of that, and similarly for other cultures, for Black families, other equity-deserving populations, really trying to make those resiliency experiences meaningful to those families.
Thank you. My second question was around partnerships. In the appendix, there was a great section that talked a lot about the partnerships that TPH has with Indigenous organizations and the work, the way in which that work supports addressing ACEs and supporting resiliency in First Nations and UMAT communities in the city. That's very, very important. I was wondering if you could also speak to how Toronto Public Health is also adapting our own programs, supporting our own workforce and the service delivery to really ensure that it's culturally safe, that it's providing anti-racist service delivery that's aligned with the framework. So thinking about, of course, the importance of partnerships, but also that other piece around ensuring that the services and the work that TPH is delivering is also addressing the needs of communities.
To you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. We have a couple of examples of how we are trying to do this in practice that I can share to help illustrate. One of the ways is we often partner with an Indigenous agency So, for example, we're currently partnering with an Indigenous agency and working with them to develop and design new programming specifically to fathers. And so through a fathering circle, it's called. And so we're piloting that project, but it's in collaboration with the Indigenous organizations that we're designing and developing and evaluating how we continue to deliver that service. In terms of an example, in our schools, we've hired 2 Indigenous nurses who are specifically assigned to schools that have high Indigenous populations. And for initiatives like our ISPA program, where suspension may be a possibility for students that aren't in compliance, we engage with the superintendents at that school responsible for Indigenous. We partner with Indigenous organizations to really think through how we communicate, approach, engage the families around the importance of vaccination, and really design a slightly modified intervention for what we may do in other schools. So those are just 2 examples I'll highlight. And sorry, I should add the third is that we are doing significant training around trauma-informed training across all of our staff. We've already trained approximately 350 staff. We've also trained our people leaders to make sure that our people leaders are coaching, mentoring, providing advice and guidance along the way, and that program is going to be expanded across Toronto Public Health. And in partnership with other city divisions, we're looking to continue that work so that we're providing the best possible care possible. So those are 3 examples, but some work happening there.
Thank you. I will ask questions last. The good thing about being last, most of my questions have been asked and answered. So, so I actually have to look and find other questions. So I do have 2 questions. The pandemic, how does this impact the ACEs in our city? Like, again, it's been a once in a lifetime situation that really has impacted young people. So maybe you can speak to that somewhat.
Thank you, Chair. I think the part of the reason that there was such a desire to bring forward the Ontario Adversity Framework at this time after the pandemic is because we recognize the significant impact that COVID has had on family, on society, on the children. We have seen through the pandemic a significant increase in intimate partner violence, which is one of the main forms of adverse child experience that children can be exposed to. We have seen increases in worsening of parental mental health and substance use through this period as well. We've seen through the opioid toxicity crisis, a number of families have lost family members as being all contributors to increasing risk for children experiencing adverse childhood experiences through the pandemic time. At the same time, we've seen through the pandemic a number of positive factors because sometimes families were at home. We saw one of the deputants show the data on suicide, and we know that actually suicides declined during the pandemic because families were at home more often and were able to support that. So mental health worsened, but suicides actually declined. So there had been some positive impacts of that as well, and I think some new ways to connect with people. We did see an advancement in technology, and certainly there are harms with cell phones and technology, but also new ways of accessing mental health supports and resources that we are connecting. I think as we are coming out of the pandemic, we have re-strengthened a number of our services. So programs like Healthy Babies, Healthy Children, which were interrupted during COVID, really being able to re-strengthen those, making sure we're taking an equity lens and delivering those services, increasing things like our perinatal adjustment program to be able to reach families, to be able to help support some of the impacts we've seen through COVID and the continuing impacts that we're seeing now.
Wonderful. It was mentioned that you work with other divisions within the city, but have you looked, and I know Councillor Chang mentioned an American state, but have we looked, do you work with other jurisdictions across Ontario and best practices, what they're doing, what works, what doesn't work? Because again, I know we have these borders around regions, but we're all Canadians here.
Yes, thank you for the question. We do work with other jurisdictions, so we know that Vancouver also has an early adversity and resilience framework. They developed theirs prior to us, and we've adapted a lot of lessons learned from their experience. And as I mentioned, there's a community of practice for the early adversity and resilience framework that has representation from the 29 health units across the province, and that's where a lot of the evidence, research, and experiences is brought together, and application of how the framework is applied is kind of discussed in that forum. So we connect regularly through that group as well.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Those are my questions. Okay, seeing no other questions, let's take it to speakers. Who wants to go first? Councillor Bravo.
Thank you. I have a motion. And thank you very much to staff and for clerks with your help. While it's displayed, it refers to the point that school trustee Debbie King raised in her deputation, and I've been hearing from parents and also from other school trustees concerned about the continuing sharing of the indices of inequity framed as a learning opportunity, and the importance for the work of Toronto Public Health in its design, delivery, and implementation of interventions that promote health among children and youth. I really want to congratulate staff for this report. I felt, as my peers did here, that it's an excellent piece of work to bring together this information that sets out for us and for members of the public in Toronto the importance of these experiences that happen before the age of 18 that can have a lifelong impact on mental health. We've been so concerned, and as a board, about children's mental health, children's wellness, and all of the different factors that harm them. But the significant ones outlined by the medical officer of health, I think, need special attention. Traumatic events that shape a life, but also setting out their consequences, and then some of the work that can be done to mitigate, to prevent, and to protect. And so I feel, as Councillor Thompson said, I was excited to read this report, grateful for the work, and the importance of this all being done in a data-driven way. And as our colleague, Director Mador said, done in partnership, in deep, meaningful partnership with organizations that can look at the layers of exclusion, inequity that compound these experiences. So I really want to thank staff and all the deputants that came today to speak about the importance and the need to ensure that we have the best outcomes possible. Can't think of a more important intervention that pays off as for society is focusing on children. And I would love to see more and more of our focus to be on children, and perhaps we can inflect this into the rest of society. And certainly the partnerships with other city divisions are crucial as we refocus on how we ensure that we have a better society and better outcomes in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bravo. Well said. Councillor Chang.
Thank you, Chair. I too have a motion. The motion is focusing on increasing knowledge and public awareness of ACEs and resilience, on strengthening data collection, and this is part one of my motion. Sorry, and then there's another part. We can just put that on the screen as well.
Here's a second motion.
Yeah, which also reiterates what some of the deputants mentioned about asking the Minister of Education to preserve the school climate survey and consider expanding it to include issues raised in the Ontario Early Adversity and Resilience Framework. And I want to, also echo my gratitude for this really important work that puts into, I think, public knowledge, something that I think more people need to know about. And, we saw that the Toronto Police Service put out a dashboard on IPV last year, and the number of occurrences hovers around 15 to 16,000 for the last 14 years. And in 2019, the research shows that 80% of IPV victims don't report to the police. So we know that the 15 to 16,000 reported is just a fraction. And the impact of IPV on children and that adverse childhood experience is proven and profound. And so if we have an IPV epidemic, we have an adverse childhood experience epidemic. And so anything we can do to prevent both, I think will have meaningful long-range impacts on people. And I just want to share that this is very, very personal for me because I struggled with several ACEs in my upbringing, and I did not have the language and I didn't know what it was. I only knew that in my 20s, I hit a moment in my life where a lot of things started to unravel. I had mental health challenges, I had an eating disorder, and I blamed myself. So I thought, how come everyone else seems to be doing okay, but I am really struggling, even though to many on the outside I looked very shiny and I was still achieving publicly, but internally I was really, really struggling. And one day, someone mentioned the ACEs to me, and I took a tool online to assess myself, and it just put all of these things into focus. Suddenly, the struggles I had made sense, and suddenly I didn't have to blame myself anymore. And I think it's really important to note that, we measured maybe 30% of adults have ACEs in their life, but we are not sure. It could be far more because of the limits to how we collect that data. And I think the impact of having ACEs is that you are then limping. You're limping in different ways. Some people it's addiction. Some people it's mental health. Some people, have health challenges, but you don't know you're limping and you don't know why you're limping. And that's why I think bringing this into further public awareness, with the delicacy of not re-traumatizing people, but empowering people to say, if you have ACEs in your life, which many people do, there are ways that you can heal, that you can be empowered. And for me, I believe that the struggles that I went through in my childhood have really informed my leadership, the way I deal with people, the way I want to see a more connected community where people feel empowered and people feel a sense of belonging. These all have roots in the challenges that I face. So having ACEs is not a sentence, but it does bring clarity and a pathway for people who might be struggling and don't know why they're struggling. So I look forward to a future report back on the progress that we're making in this area, and I look forward to strengthening collaboration with other organizations. I think it will have a profound impact on the trajectory of many people's lives as more people know about this and as we build a more resilient society. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chang. Any other speakers on this item? Seeing none, again, I'll just say thank you to staff for this comprehensive report. I actually learned a lot about ACEs. I didn't know as much about it before. And some of the things the questions I wanted to ask was actually around LOI and student nutrition and housing and Vision Zero, all the things the city's been working on, especially the food nutrition program, which is really important. And of course, the SRO program, which impacts students significantly, again, Indigenous and Black students in the school boards. And I'm happy the TDSB actually took steps to limit that program, and I hope other school boards do that as well. And with that being said, I don't want to say more than has been said already, but I support the motions that's been brought forth by Councillor Bravo and Councillor Cheng. I think it enhances the recommendations here. And with that, I will ask staff to put up the amendments. Councillor Thompson, did you want to speak? No?
No, I was planning to vote, Mr. Chair. Good, you have to go. Sure.
All right. Okay, all those in favor of Councillor Bravo's motion? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Chang's first motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next, the last motion by Councillor Chang. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Item as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Great discussion. Okay, and the last item is item 32.1, promoting positive childhood experiences to improve health outcomes across. Nope, that's what we just did. HL 32.2, services agreements awarded and executed by the Medical Office of Health for 2026. And we have three speakers on this item. Daniel Freiheit, online. Is he here? Daniel, can you hear me?
Can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
How's my audio okay?
Yep.
By the way, on that school climate survey, I tried to, there's a copyright threat when the parent looks at that survey, so they can't actually discuss it or share it easily. Anyhow, off topic, but I just thought to threaten parents with trademark infringement for publishing that survey, that was pretty weird. My name is Dan Freiheit, as most of you know. I do some advocacy on Twitter, mostly, under Lion Advocacy. I'm up to 38,300 followers. I get around 78 million views on my posts. I wanted to talk today about the issue of vaccine injury support. Because I was looking at the budget that the board has approved, or is on the verge of approving for other items on the budget, specifically the sexual health clinic, which is getting 2.8 million. So it's just about, for my presentation today is really just about how to manage priorities and how to manage the queue, because there are people out there, Torontonians, who've been waiting 4 to 5 years for compensation for vaccine injuries. And these are not myths. These are, in some cases, they're often verified. This had been managed by the federal government from the beginning of the pandemic, or from December 2020 up until April 1st of this year, 2026. It was being managed by a private contractor who was processing the injuries, or supposed to be processing them, but the contractor was really having issues getting through them for some reason. I mean, I think I know the reasons, but seeking a lot of documentation, direct control of the documentation, so asking directly from hospitals and physicians to have the documents go directly to the assessor. And so there are a lot of people's injuries didn't get processed. They just never went through. I actually spoke to people at the Vaccine Injury Support Program, employees. There was a lot of turnover. There was I think I mentioned this to this board, but one of the staff was apparently having mental distress. I think the point is, now the federal government decided to take it over, or that's how they pitched it. They said, we're going to take it over from this private contractor because they don't seem to be doing a good job. And what I just learned this a week or two ago from a young lady who advocates a lot on Twitter. Her name is Kayla Pollock, but that this new processing by the federal government, they haven't appointed any medical advisors to actually look at these claims yet, and that's a major flag. So you've got people 4 or 5 years out, some with serious catastrophic injuries that have mobility issues now, that are in constant pain, that need physiotherapy, that need medication, and then medication's not cheap. They're struggling to get by, and so when I see these amounts that are being spent on, birth control counseling and low-cost birth control, emergency contraceptive pills, IUDs, free condoms and lube, vaccines for STIs. I mean, all that's important, but I just wonder if there's a better way to manage the queue. Like I say, these people have been reaching out to me for years. I couldn't talk about it on internet because I was censored. If I mentioned the word vaccine or injury in the same sentence, for some reason the AI or the censors took down the video and made it very difficult to discuss. The reason why you're not hearing more from vaccine injured people in this Board of Health is because they had difficulties mobilizing. They formed Facebook groups that were taken down. Our friend Zuckerberg at Meta acknowledged under oath that he had been working with the U.S. government to restrict the mobilization of people injured by the vaccine. That's a serious problem that's going to need addressing at some point. But the point is, the only reason you're not hearing more from people who've been injured by the vaccine, is because some of them are in a situation where they're not able to get down to the Board of Health or to have the energy to speak. Thankfully, I still got a bit of energy left in me, and that's what I'm doing. I was contacted early on by a conservative MP out west about constituents in his riding, what to do, but how to help people with vaccine injuries. The Board of Health has a unique opportunity now with some of the budget items. I'm just respectfully requesting a reconsideration of priorities and queue management. So in other words, we've got these people in the queue. The Board of Health can actually work strategically with Public Health Agency of Canada to process these claims, streamline them, and get people the help they need.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions of the Deputant? Seeing none. Thank you. Councillor Chernoslin and Bertza, can you please turn your camera on for quorum? Thank you. Next up is Councillor Chernoslin, Councillor Bertza. We're good? Okay. Arnold Marguilas, online. Okay, go ahead, you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity again to talk to the Board of Health. Yet again today, we are hearing concerns of the residents about the failure to enforce the current indoor air quality by the Toronto Public Health. And to that effect, I appreciate the chair and the board on the session number 30 that you actually purposed the Toronto Public Health to provide a comprehensive review by the third quarter of this year. I just wanted to suggest that review is not enough. They also need to provide the suggestions or the proposals how to actually improve the service, not to review only the status quo. And in order to do it, the logical step is to run the pilot right now on the basis of one of the environmental health enforcement units. I would suggest a North York unit because it's kind of close to North Industrial area. I'm living at Butler Street, and along the corridor at night, there are some releases of pollutants from the industrial companies at night. So, I also suggest to engage public, just like MLS was actively engaging public and ACORN in their meetings, discussing the property standards development and also the MLS Real Safe Toronto development. I'm one of those residents concerned that you can easily engage me, and it would be to your benefit. I'm pretty sure about it. So, what are the components of the pilot that I suggest? First is education. So, your inspectors are insufficiently qualified to enforce indoor air quality based on my experience. I spoke to University of Toronto and the Metropolitan University professors about the possibility to quickly develop the curriculum for continuing education program. And you can sign actually contracts, and they would be happy to educate, fast track your inspectors to actually enforce the current standards in indoor air quality. So the second thing is to identify suppliers and equip the inspectors with modern portable air quality measurement devices. So current devices, they're insufficient. They measure particulate matter, but they don't measure volatile organic compounds, which are even more essential for harmful effects on health of bad indoor air quality in schools and residential buildings. Sometimes due to negligence of the landlords and management of schools, and sometimes intentionally to speed up tenants' turnaround. So in that regard, as you know, the Provincial Public Health Unit has an indoor air quality equipment loan program, and your inspectors should register, sign contracts, and regularly loan these devices when doing the inspections in the building, in particular within this pilot project. And that also includes training, right? So they are expected to train your inspectors, how to use the devices. So the first thing is they establish cooperation with the provincial environment enforcement units, Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. They have Toronto District Office enforcing outdoor air quality. They have a laboratory services branch with a pretty good equipped labs with mass spectrometers to allow analyzing outdoor air quality. You need to establish the contracts with this particular ministry in order to jointly inspect buildings, schools, and also overnight samples should be left at facilities and then analyzed in Ministry of Environment lab at minimum cost to you. So the fifth step is establishing a night shift for the pilot project. And at least one inspector should be working at night at the pilot project unit. And just like MLS have, let's say, noise department, they work at night until 2 a.m. because it's critical. Otherwise, it's not going to work. The contamination often happens at night. So the sixth step is improve your complaints processing, because people will come with this with suggestions how to improve the process. And I'm just asking you to also engage.
Yes, you're at time, sir. Final thoughts.
Okay, final thought is engage city manager in order to develop a joint policies, how you are going to work with other enforcement departments jointly to enforce indoor air quality. And I'm asking to, right now, to put a motion to vote or to start this pilot project on June 1st of this year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the deputant? Seeing none. We are on the final item. I know Councillor Cherneslin has to leave as well. She's got an emergency call. But we had beer quorum. If Councillor Chang stays on, Councillor Cherneslin can leave. Okay? But no one else can. Nicole Corrado.
Yes, I was very, very concerned about. I was very concerned about one of the people who they're raising, one of the places that they're contracting with. In particular, I'm quite concerned about the Planned Parenthood, and I know that there's a lot of myths about Planned Parenthood out there, but but I am quite concerned because I looked them up and there's a lot of misinformation on the Planned Parenthood site. For one thing, they said that the Planned Parenthood is used to, like they said that an abortion expels a pregnancy. No, it expels a dead fetus. So there's a lot of misinformation. They're not really giving women a lot of choices because there aren't lists of alternatives on their website. The City of Toronto, and when I Google abortion alternatives, it just comes up with abortion clinics. And the other thing is that's very concerning is well, it says, talks about the abortion pill, but it doesn't say that there's actually reversal for the first pill that will stop the abortion from happening. They won't tell you that.
Okay, is that it?
Well, no, I was trying to say that there's a lot of concern about that. I don't think the City of Toronto should be putting money into Planned Parenthood because they already get enough money as it is. Planned Parenthood, they don't need money. They don't need people's tax. Such a controversial organization does not need people's tax dollars.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I don't think, yes, I would suggest giving money to somewhere else for a less controversial organization.
Okay, thank you for your deputation. Any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, thank you. Take it in-house, questions of staff? No? Speakers? No? Okay, thank you so much. This is a easy breezy one. All those in favor of the recommendations? Opposed, carried. Okay, thank you. And the final item here is that I'm going to bring a motion forward to excuse. One second. I'll move a motion to excuse the absence of Director Charles Ozode, not in attendance today. And I'll read it. That the Board of Health excuses the absence of Abinina, oh yeah, there's two people here. Abinina Chandrabalan and Charles Ozode from the May 4, 2026 meeting of the Board of Health. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, every staff. Thank you to my colleagues around the table and to all the deputants and those online. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Chair, Perusa here. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.